I want to tell you something that took me an embarrassingly long time to figure out. When I was in my first year of taking 3D seriously, not dabbling, not I do this sometimes, actually committed, this is an going level, I had this mental model of how it was supposed to go. Learn the software, build the skills, make it work, put out there. Career follows. Clean, linear, logical. And I watched that model fail. Not just for me, for almost everyone around me who started at roughly the same time with roughly the same level of commitment. People who were talented, people who worked hard, people who genuinely cared about the craft in a way that should have been enough. Most of them aren't doing 3D professionally today. And for a long time, I told myself the standard story about why. The market is tough. The competition is fierce. Not everyone makes it, and that's just how creative industries work. Which is true, but it's not the real story. It's the comfortable story. The one that doesn't require you to look too closely at what actually happened. The real story is different, and it's specific. And it's the same story with minor variations almost every single time. It's not that people ran out of talent. It's not that they ran out of opportunity. It's that they ran out of something else entirely. Something that nobody in the 3D space talks about honestly. Something that was draining in the background the whole time. Invisible until suddenly there was nothing left and the decision to stop felt almost like relief. I've been turning this over in my head for a while now. Talking to artists who made it through the first year and artists who didn't. Looking for the pattern. And I found it. It's not what you think. Here's what this video is going to do. I'm going to give you an honest, specific diagnosis of why most 3D artists don't make it through the first year. Not the surface level reasons. Not they didn't work hard enough, or the market is too competitive, or they didn't have the right software. The actual reasons. The ones that operate underneath the surface. That most people don't identify until it's too late, because by the time they're visible, the damage is already done. And then I'm going to show you what the artists who do make it through the first year actually do differently. Not the talent difference, because often there isn't one. The behavioral difference, the thinking difference, the specific decisions and approaches that create a first year that compounds into a second year, and a third year, and eventually something that looks like a real career. Some of what I'm going to say is going to feel uncomfortably accurate if you're in your first year right now. That's intentional. The comfortable version of this conversation isn't useful. The honest version is. And I want to be clear, this is not a video about whether you're talented enough or whether the career is viable. We've covered both of those. This is specifically about the first year. The crucible. The period where most of the decisions that determine the long-term outcome get made. Often without the person making them realizing how consequential they are. Let's get into it. Before the diagnosis, I want to share something that reframed how I think about first-year failure entirely. I used to think about it as an attrition problem. Like, a certain percentage of people who start something difficult will inevitably stop. And that percentage is essentially fixed by the difficulty of the thing. Talent shakes out. Commitment shakes out. The ones who remain are the ones who were always going to remain. And then I talked to someone who'd left 3D after 10 months. Talented artist. Genuinely. Work that made me look twice. And I asked them, honestly, what happened? And they said something that I've been thinking about ever since. They said, I never ran out of motivation. I ran out of evidence that anything was working. Not motivation. Evidence. And that distinction between motivational failure and evidential failure completely changed how I understand why people stop. Because motivation is something you can manufacture. You can watch an inspiring video, read a compelling story, reconnect with why you started. Motivation comes back, but evidence is different. Evidence is what your results are telling you about your approach. And if the evidence, month after month, is telling you that nothing you're doing is producing any signal of progress toward the outcome you actually want, no clients, no income, no meaningful traction, at some point the rational response is to stop. Not because you're weak, because you're paying attention. The artists who fail in their first year are not, in most cases, failing because they lack motivation or talent or commitment. They're failing because they're working hard in the wrong direction and the feedback loop is too slow and too quiet to tell them before it's too late. That's the real story. And here's how it plays out specifically. This is the most common failure mode in the first year. It's insidious because it feels like exactly the right thing to be doing. Tutorial after tutorial, course after course, software deep dives, workflow videos, technique breakdowns, consuming enormous amounts of content about 3D art while producing a fraction of the actual 3D art that would constitute real progress. And it feels productive. It genuinely does. You're learning things. You're getting better. Every tutorial adds something. But there's a trap inside it that's very hard to see from the inside. Learning is safe. Making is exposed. When you're watching a tutorial, you cannot fail. You cannot produce something disappointing. You cannot put work out and have it be ignored or criticized or met with silence. The learning state is a permanently comfortable state that requires nothing vulnerable from you and therefore returns nothing real. The artists who make it through the first year are not the ones who learn the most. They're the ones who made the most and learned from the making. Who finished things even when the things weren't good. Who put work out before they felt ready. Who collected the slightly uncomfortable data of real feedback and real response. Because that data, however humbling, is what actually shapes a career. If you're in your first year and your ratio of consuming content about 3D to actually producing 3D is greater than 50-50, that's the thing to fix first, before everything else. Here's a question. What does success look like for you at the end of your first year? Not eventually. At the end of month 12. Specifically, what number of clients, what income figure, what portfolio pieces, what skill benchmarks would tell you, unambiguously, that the year went well? Most first-year artists cannot answer that question specifically. They have a direction. I want to be a 3D artist, but not a destination. And without a destination, every month of the first year produces the same ambiguous evidence. Am I making progress? Hard to say. Is this working? Unclear. And ambiguous evidence is demoralizing in a specific way. It doesn't give you the clean signal of failure, which would at least tell you to change something. It gives you a fog, a chronic uncertainty that accumulates month over month until the weight of not knowing becomes heavier than the motivation to continue. The artists who make it set specific, measurable, time-bound targets at the start of the year. Not get better at 3D. 3 portfolio pieces in a specific niche by month 4. First paid project by month 7. 5 client conversations by month 9. Specific enough that at any point in the year you can look at where you are and know clearly whether you're on track. And if you're not, know specifically what to adjust. Specificity is not just strategic. It's psychological protection against the fog. This one I've talked about in other videos, but it bears repeating here because it's one of the most consequential first-year mistakes I see. The plan is, get good first, then figure out the business side. Skills now, clients later. Portfolio now, positioning later. Craft now, visibility later. And it sounds sensible. It feels humble and focused. I'm not going to try to get clients before I'm ready. I'm going to get ready first. But here's what actually happens. Month 1, learning, not thinking about business. Month 3, still learning, still not thinking about business. Month 6, starting to feel like the skills are getting somewhere, but the business stuff feels overwhelming and also the skills aren't quite there yet, so still not the right time. Month 9, the skills are there, but there's no portfolio that speaks to clients, no visibility, no positioning, no idea how to even start, and 8 months of momentum that went nowhere commercially. Month 10, starting to wonder if this is working. The business is not a sequel to the craft. It's a parallel track that needs to start in month 1. Not because you need clients in month 1. You probably won't be ready for that. But because the decisions you make about your niche, your positioning, your target client, your portfolio focus, these decisions shape what you practice, what you make, what you put out, and what kind of opportunities come toward you. Start them late, and you spend the first year building in a direction that serves your artistic development, but doesn't serve the career you're trying to build. Start them early, even clumsily, even imperfectly, and your first year builds something that has commercial momentum by the end of it. Being busy is not the same as building towards something. And in the first year, when there's so much to learn, so many directions to explore, so many exciting rabbit holes to go down, it's very easy to be extremely busy while making very little directional progress. Learning a new software every 2 months. Shifting between niches every time a new inspiration strikes. Starting portfolio pieces and abandoning them before they're finished. Engaging in community for the social validation without pushing the work forward in a meaningful way. All of this feels like activity, and activity feels like progress. But activity without direction is just motion, and motion without direction doesn't take you anywhere. The specific thing that separates the artists who make it through year one from the ones who don't is what I call directional consistency. Not rigidity, not refusing to adapt or learn or change, but a consistent orientation toward a specific outcome. An ability to ask, does this thing I'm about to spend time on move me toward where I'm going? And to answer that honestly, and to say no to the things that don't, even when those things are interesting, even when the rabbit hole is genuinely compelling. Focus in the first year is not a nice to have. It is the difference between a first year that compounds into a second year and a first year that exhausts itself without arriving anywhere. This is the one nobody talks about directly, and I think it's the one that does the most invisible damage. The first year of building a creative career is emotionally harder than almost anyone tells you it will be. Not just difficult in the way that learning difficult things is difficult. Emotionally hard in a specific way that targets the things that matter most to you. You put work out, and it gets less response than you hoped for. You see other artists at a similar stage producing work that looks better than yours and getting more traction, and you don't know why. You have conversations with potential clients that don't go anywhere, and you can't identify what went wrong. You have months where you work as hard as you've ever worked, and the tangible results of that work are essentially invisible. And you carry all of this while also trying to learn a complex technical skill, build a portfolio, figure out a business, maintain whatever other life responsibilities you have, and in many cases doing all of this without any of the social structure and external accountability that a job provides. That is a lot. It is genuinely a lot. And the artists who stop in the first year are not, in most cases, stopping because they couldn't handle the technical challenge. They're stopping because the emotional weight accumulated to a point where continuing felt unreasonable. The artists who make it through are not emotionally invulnerable. They're not immune to the discouragement or the comparison or the quiet months. They just have, intentionally or accidentally, a set of practices that process the weight rather than accumulate it. Community. Honest conversation with people who understand the path. A clear enough vision of where they're going that bad months can be contextualized rather than catastrophized. And the self-awareness to recognize when they need to step back and recover rather than push through and burn out. Emotional sustainability is a strategy, not a soft nice-to-have, an actual career strategy. The first year only compounds into a second year if you're still standing at the end of it. Last one, and it's the one that I think is the deepest. There's a specific kind of waiting that kills first-year careers before they start. A waiting for the moment when you feel ready, when the skills feel sufficient, when the portfolio feels strong enough, when the timing feels right, when some external signal tells you now. Now is when you go. That signal almost never comes, because readiness is not a state you arrive at. It's a story you tell yourself about when it's safe to try. And the story keeps moving. The bar keeps shifting. There's always one more tutorial to finish, one more piece to add to the portfolio, one more month of practicing before you reach out to that first potential client. And meanwhile, the first year passes, and the career that was supposed to start after the readiness arrived never starts. Because the readiness was always conditional on something that was always just slightly out of reach. The permission you're waiting for is not coming from outside. It was never coming from outside. The only permission that matters is the one you give yourself. And the artists who make it through the first year give it early, messily, imperfectly before they feel ready, and then use the results to calibrate rather than waiting for readiness to show up and give them a clean start. Done imperfectly beats planned perfectly every single time, in the first year especially. Let me pull this together. The artists who make it through the first year are not dramatically more talented than the ones who don't. They're not working dramatically harder. They're not luckier. They just do a small number of specific things differently. They make more than they consume. They set specific targets, so they always have evidence of whether they're on track. They run the business track parallel to the skill track from month one. They stay directionally focused even when interesting distractions present themselves. They build practices that process the emotional weight rather than letting it accumulate. And they give themselves permission to start before they feel ready. And they keep giving themselves that permission every time the waiting reflex shows up. None of these things are heroic. None of them require exceptional talent or exceptional willpower. They require a specific kind of self-awareness, the ability to see your own patterns clearly enough to interrupt the ones that don't serve you. And that self-awareness is, I think, the actual differentiator. Not talent, not hustle, seeing clearly. Now, something I've been sitting with while putting this together. Everything I've described in this video is about the first year. The patterns, the mistakes, the things that separate the artists who make it from the ones who don't. But here's what I haven't addressed yet. And it's something that I think is actually more important than any individual mistake on that list. The environment you put yourself in during the first year. Because here's what I've noticed. The artists who make it through the first year, almost without exception, are not doing it entirely alone. They have something, a community, a mentor relationship, an accountability structure, a group of peers who are further along and whose example makes the path feel more real and more possible. And the artists who don't make it, who run out of evidence before they run out of talent, are very often doing it in isolation, without anyone who's been through it to tell them that the fog is normal, without anyone to look at their work and give them the kind of feedback that actually moves the needle rather than the generic great work of online communities. The environment you learn in shapes what you're able to sustain. And I want to talk specifically about how to build the right environment for a first year that actually makes it to a second. What that looks like, where to find it, and how to use it without becoming dependent on it. That's the next one. And if you're in your first year right now, or about to start, that video is going to matter. So, why do 90% of 3D artists fail in their first year? They optimize for learning instead of doing. They set invisible goals that can't produce clear evidence of progress. They treat the business as a sequel to the craft instead of a parallel track. They mistake movement for directional progress. They underestimate the emotional weight and don't build practices to process it. And they wait for a permission that was never going to come from outside. The artists who make it don't avoid all of these. They catch them faster. They correct sooner. They see their own patterns clearly enough to interrupt the ones that aren't serving them. That's it. That's the whole difference. Not talent. Pattern recognition. If you're in your first year or about to start one, I want you to screenshot this video's title and put it somewhere you'll see it. Not as a warning, as a map, because now you know where the holes are, which means you can walk around them instead of falling in. Subscribe if this kind of honest, specific career diagnosis is useful to you. Everything I make is built around giving you the real picture, not the comfortable one. Hit the bell for the next video because the environment question is one I think is going to be genuinely useful in a practical way. And drop a comment. If you're in your first year right now, which of these 6 resonated most? Or if you're past it, which one do you wish someone had named for you earlier? I read every single one. I'll see you in the next one.